Liven 64 presents a Playguide and video review. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Hey there, welcome to another Lemon 64 play guide and review. In this episode we'll be taking a look at another Mastertronic game. And so before we move on, let's take a look at an isometric 3D racer. And in this case it's Action Biker, produced by Mastertronic in conjunction with KP Skips. The game opens with a pretty bland and mediocre introduction page. All we can do is press F7 to switch off the music or press space to play the game. In Action Biker we play unsurprisingly as a biker. We start off with the basic frame of a bike with two wheels and an engine. What we have to do is to drive around this mini world, picking up all parts of the bike we need to compete in a race at the end. So you can see I've picked up a crash helmet and some riding leathers. At the start, the player will have practically no idea what these items are and will have to memorise all those. There are 30 items in the entire game and we'll have to find those through trial and error. You can see various locations already in this place and in this mysterious unknown town. You can find the construction yard there. And by careful driving, I happen to note there's another pickup, and that is a gearbox. By collecting the gearbox, I can now press fire, and that will change from high to low gear, which helps manoeuvring around this small town. Of course, we cannot collide with anything, whether it be a brick, or a brick wall, or a fence. We'll die, so we can't afford to touch anything. You can see, by pushing forward, we can get some speed out of this engine, and back we go to find another object. You can see in the bottom corner there is a bonus meter, and that will reset whenever we collect an object, and we'll gain more score depending on that bonus meter when we collect the item. Some of these items are quite close together, and so if we pick up one, it's not too far to pick up another, and as long as the player can memorise these things and take their time so they don't crash, they will find the game starts out pretty lenient. And there's a petrol gauge there. Well, we already have a fuel gauge actually, and it's on red. At the beginning of the game we can have the red and the yellow meter on our fuel gauge, but you can just see I've picked up an extra fuel tank there. That means we can refuel all the way through the yellow, all the way through the green, and now we can have a full tank. This gives us extra time to find the next item. But you can see the bonus is ticking down there for a maximum of 7,000, so it's always good to get on and collect those items. The faster you collect those, the more score. Sometimes driving around this game is pretty endless when you don't actually know where you're driving, and so unless the player has a memory or they've actually mapped these item locations down on a memory map, then they will find driving sometimes aimlessly through this landscape. But you can see the early 3D aspects of this game. It's great to drive around in early 3D. And maybe this is close enough to Grand Theft Auto for 1985. Sneak along there, don't touch the water, and maybe a few sparkles in the water and on the lake would have fleshed out this game and made it look even more alive and more 3D. But we don't have any animations on the landscape except for the items which we need to pick up. So let's check out the next one, and it happens to be an increase in speed. Sometimes high speed doesn't help in these very narrow situations, but at the end of the game when we need that high speed it will be there. So sticking in low gear there, you can see in high revs, low gear, we are fast enough. And don't need to go any faster than that, otherwise it will lead to mistakes. Can of pop there, so I don't really think that's an essential ingredient if you want to be the world's most ace biker, but can of pop. What else mostly find a visor. So we found the helmet, and now we found the visor for the helmet. So yes, this bike is a bag of bolts when we start this game, and we are slowly improving it. So where is the next item? You can see the locations are basically split into a number of key areas. The roller coaster there, and again, sliding across that bridge. We can't afford one pixel out, or we'll crash and we'll die. Gives us an exhaust pipe. So there is the roller coaster area, there's the drag strip, there's the fuel station and the lake. There is also a jumping ground, which I'm approaching here, and jumping in the jumping ground is necessary to collect some of those items. So you can see I'm about to do that. We cannot reverse the bike, unfortunately, but we can turn with a very tight turning circle, particularly at low speeds. So let's get some speed up and over that fence, just about. That gives us improved braking. So let's check that out. Let's race up this track, and because it's an isometric 3D, it will loop around constantly forever. And let's brake. Well, there is some improved braking there, and let's refuel to the top. So there is no traffic on the road, there is no pedestrians, and there is no attendant in the shop. In fact, there is no cash either, and that means all the fuel is basically given out for free. We can see very difficult times ahead there, and we cannot just scramble across the water like a real bike. No, we have to go across that bridge. That's given us a speedometer, which does not appear in this version of the game, and we will see later on an update which does give us a speedometer. And back we go to the construction yard. So I was introduced to this game back in the dark old days of the 1980s on an Atari 800 XL computer, along with LA SWAT. And so this is one of the very first games I remember playing, even before I got my own machine. I was blown away by the 3D landscape and the fact that the player could make up their own choice of where to go and how to get there. I really do like the graphics and the feel and the atmosphere of the open world sandbox environment. On the Atari and on the 64, it felt futuristic, and it felt like the hardware was really being pushed to some kind of limit. On the 64, we find my skills are about to be tested for the first time, climbing the construction yard. And here we must line the bike up absolutely perfectly, and the bike will veer off at an odd angle as we start to rise in accordance with that 3D. If we fall off this construction set, then that won't harm us, and we won't die unless we collide into one of those columns or the wall, and then we will die. So we can speed up through there, and we can collect that, and we'll fall off the end. That gives us a turbo. Let's test that turbo out. And well, there is actually another prize to collect, so before we do that, let's risk everything. So lining these things up isn't easy, but it's a great feeling having done so, and speed over there without colliding with anything. And it's inch by inch tricky manoeuvres there, but that time is ticking down for the bonus, so we can't really afford to wait. And then speed up and hope we get over the other side, just about. So the 3D doesn't really make use of amazing 3D, not like Excite Bike, which appeared for the NES, but you can see that this is a forerunner to Excite Bike, and a forerunner to games like Grand Theft Auto. So let's see what this is. Indicators. Well, we don't really need indicators too much on a drag strip at the end of the race, but let's collect those anyway. And those 30 items now really piling up. We've probably collected half of those already. Keeping an eye on that fuel meter there. And look at that, we have a chance to go for the roller coaster. If we line that thing up again perfectly at the beginning, we can actually floor it all the way through and collect this item while we're doing it, and then we can throw ourselves off the end. Well, we can throw ourselves off the end there you go, and without any harm to the bike. And that's the better than Kickstart 2, when we fall off an item, we won't blow up. So as long as we don't touch anything, then we are safe in this game, and we don't have to put up with endless explosions. So sneaking on in there, we found a two-tone horn. You can see we have 5 lives, and that's plenty as long as we don't make any mistakes. And the only reason that we will make a mistake is if we try and rush the level. And sometimes if we're trying to, oh look at that, that is a very difficult one to get, and if we try and rush that, we'll be making one mistake after another. So look at the fuel level as well, we're not having much fuel there, but we're going to give it a try anyway. If we take this slow enough, then we should be able to make this with that fuel, and turning has never been more crucial. See there, if we miss one of those things, we'll fall off. We'll have to do this all over again. So sometimes it's best to crawl forward there, stop, and then inch forward right on those corners, and then that gives us the best chance. Otherwise, falling off this thing is infuriating, and I've been known to fall off this thing 20 times just trying to collect this one object. So as usual in life, it's better to get things right first time, and so if we can get this right first time, it will save us all that trouble going back. And look at that, inching forward there, determined not to fall off. It's so easily done at this stage, and crawling forward there, at least we're in low gear. The fuel is bottoming out, so the bonus is bottoming out, but we cannot even afford to look at those, because if we do, we might miss this object. Let's collect that. Great, that's reflectors, and then we can leap straight off the top without crashing. So let's make our way back to the gas station and ignore that pickup. Well, look at that, still trying to collect those pickups there even with that gas remaining. Yes, it is possible to do that, and you can just fall over those things as you are touring around the landscape, but sometimes you'll be trailing around that landscape for quite some time trying to find objects, so that's another aspect of this game. Let's fuel that thing up there all the way to the top. You can hear the music endlessly looping around, and that was designed and coded by Mr. Rob Hubbard, and Rob Hubbard of Thing on the Spring fame, Monty on the Run, and all those other games that we've mentioned already. So this game was coded by an unknown coder with no idea who programmed this game, and we don't know who the graphics artist was either, but we do know that the music was Rob Hubbard, and that was certainly put to great use. I did appreciate this music at the time, although playing this all the way back now in 2014, the music is actually quite annoying, but we'll try and put up with that as we try yet again to inch forward and make sure we collect another one of those items without falling off. And what's that? That's a lunchbox. Well, I thought we had a lunchbox already, now we have two. So it's great that we can leap off the top of those items without getting killed. That's certainly a great aspect, and so it doesn't take long to find those objects. I have memorised where a lot of these objects are, so that's great. If not, well, it's just a case of touring around the landscape and seeing what we can find. There isn't much to interact with, unfortunately. In fact, there's nothing to interact with except for that gas station. So these early programmers, whoever they were, didn't really push the 64 to its mega limit. But let's try to push this back to its limit, and that's Go Faster Stripes. Initially I did wonder what Go Faster Stripes were when I played this game. Go Faster Stripes are literally stripes painted on the sides of a bike, but unlike real life, the Go Faster Stripes in this game will actually make the bike go faster. Those are the water skis. Now we can travel across the lake in the middle of the level, and it's novel to do that. And now we have the added advantage of being able to get across open water, and you can speed around that very quickly indeed, and it's fun to do that. Look at that, missed the item there. Let's try it again and grab that. That's fog lamps. Careering around this thing endlessly in loops at high speed is a fun thing to do in this game, and then you can travel in the direction you want to go. So fun can be had at the player's discretion. And oh no, look at that, another construction yard unit floating around in midair there. But it is great to have those water skis, and that also allows us to get across the pond as well, the small pond behind the gas station, and bonus items like that make this game fun. And now that we can travel across water, unfortunately we cannot travel across the streams, and if you cross the streams you will die, so you can only cross open patches of water with that. And I think on the Atari version we actually pick up a snorkel instead, and that means that we can travel that water in the same way. But those mystery items there, some of those are fun, some of those do pretty crazy things, but in general most of those will speed up the bike, which is not what we want on delicate manoeuvres such as this. So speeding up the bike is very easy to do, so let's keep in that low gear and let's aim and align that thing up perfectly, and we have to get that thing right on the edge there to collect that item, and that's a stopwatch. Well, I only just missed that low there. So back we go to the gas station. So I really appreciate this game. I had fun with this in the 80s, and it's one of those Sunday games where the player can just return to on a Sunday, potter around, collect these items and have quite a good time. The control system is very, very responsive, and there is no laggy controls. In fact, the controls get tighter the slower that bike goes, and even at high speed we can manoeuvre around these things to collect that bonus. So the tyres there, that will certainly help. And so this game is pretty comfortable in the hand and the controller. It is very manoeuvrable, and as long as the player, that certainly saves time as well. But as long as the player doesn't make any mistakes by trying to rush this thing, and construction yards are pretty boring once you find a few of those in a row, so maybe this town could have done with a little expansion. But for its day, again, I really had fun playing this, and it has fond memories for me. It's not one of those games like Pit Stop 2, which you can just play and play and play, because it gets pretty infuriating sometimes when you keep falling off these things. And it's not one of those things which is very deep and absorbing, but you can see fine controls must be used at this stage, so it's not a pushover. Easy does it there, very delicate controls, and at least this game is very controllable, but we don't want to make any mistakes, and so we have to take our time there. That can be infuriating if you just want to get on there and you want to be impatient and you want to dive across, and if you want this game to be a high speed action fest, well, it isn't, unless of course you know where all those items are, and then you can dive across and collect them all before that timer runs out. And that's a personal hi-fi system which goes well on any bike, as you well know, and so some of these items being jokey at this point, and that adds a little humour to this game and adds to the experience. So you can see specks of grass there which look a little like percentages dotted around the landscape, and we are actually looking for the next item. Sometimes it isn't possible to remember every single item, but if you say to yourself garage, drag strip, lake, construction yard and jumps, and then take yourself on a tour of those locations, eventually you'll find an item, and even if that thing is stuck in the middle of the lake. So let's see what this gives us. Is it fairy dice? No, it's an electronic ignition. This is a relatively small world, so it's not hard to memorise the map. It's just easy to lose track of where all those items are. So while I try to find the next item, which is actually stuck in the middle of the pond, I'm going to refuel. We still have 5 lives, but as long as we don't find ourselves being impatient, and that's a sure way to die. The magazine reviewers usually had a good thing to say about this game, and CMVG gave it 80%, and Your Commodore actually gave it 10 out of 10, which is 100%, basically praising the smoothness and the graphics and the sound and the playability, given the fact that this game came out for just $1.99, which, if you consider that there were a lot worse games out there, you could have had Jack Charleston's Match Fishing for virtually £8, so to pick this up for $1.99, which is much better and much better quality than that game, I think the programmers have done a good job. And despite the nitpicking of basically touching anything and you die, sometimes you can get away with that, and that's a really good feeling. So the 3D just about works, and jumping all these items, even though it's not a massive jump, it just about works, and the character of this game is great, and going around the 3D landscape in a sandbox town, to me, never gets boring. So let's collect the entry ticket to the drag race, and all we have to do, that's the last item, all we have to do is to stop there at the beginning of the race, and the counter will tick down. According to that time, it's taken us 3 hours 28 minutes to complete the game end to end, but it's actually taken us more like 22 minutes, and all we have to do is to stop there and to wait 1 minute, and eventually the light will go green. We can push forward and press fire halfway through to change the gear, and that's this game over. So it really doesn't take much time to get through to the end of this game, and I'm sure you could do a speed run in less than 18 minutes. But it's one of those games which you can complete end to end fairly quickly and gain 250,000 points. So wait for the green light there, still waiting for that thing, and unless you're in exactly the right position it won't work, so let's try and maneuver that thing around again. Let's try and trigger that, and there you go. So at the end of the game, everything freezes and all you get to see is your high score on the beginning of the game, which is useless as soon as you turn that thing off. But you can see there has been an updated version. This is the rehashed version, known as Action Biker 99, released and developed by John Wells in 1999. So that is available on the emulation on the disc, and you can see the graphics at the bottom have changed, and we now get a speedometer. And whenever we collect an item, that will now scroll across the screen, which is a nice effect. And even the Biker's 5 in the corner has been updated, and I think even our Biker has been updated. Some of the graphics have changed colours. We're now finding brown bricks in the construction yard, but apart from that, nothing much has changed, and the items are still in exactly the same place. But with the new layout, maybe that adds something to the game and makes it feel a little more professional. So it's great to see that this game's still being developed, and there is re-releases and re-versions on the PC. But I think this game still has charm all of its own, and the construction yard there, the crane apparently moves around even on the original version, but I've never noticed that. But yes, apart from that, I think it's got great character, and I really appreciate this game even to this day. So thank you for viewing another Playguide and review. See you again soon.